Okay, so now we have waited for a couple of minutes just to make sure everyone is inside. So welcome again to this Friday webinar series that we carry out every second Friday. My name is Susanna Lorin, and I'm just doing the intro here today. We are captioning this video series automatically, so you can use the closed captions button in Zoom. And if you would like to ask questions to today's speaker, please use the Q&A function, and we will make sure to answer as many questions as we have time for. And there will be first a short presentation of about 15 minutes, and then we open up for Q&A, and then we'll stop at precisely 1:30 Central European Summer Time. We will also post a link to today's free smart guide in the chat at the end of the presentation. And this meeting or this webinar is recorded, and the recording will be published on our website early next week. So with that, I would like to leave the floor to my colleague, Peter Kimmen, who will talk to us about document accessibility and the really efficient way of making that work in a good way. Please, Peter.
Thank you, Susanna. Hi, I'm Peter Kimmen. I'm an accessibility specialist, and within that, I'm focusing mostly on document accessibility and EU legislation. I'm certified by the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. I have the ADS, the Accessible Document Specialist, and the CPAC, the Accessibility Core Competence Professional Certification. We'll finish the webinar at 2 o'clock exactly. So let's start it. I'll talk today about 5 points that you can follow, or actually you should start with when you work with a document in order to help yourself to make it as accessible as possible from the beginning. So we're talking about born accessible, which is a term that's very popular, luckily, lately. Sorry. So I will talk about document structure, built-in tools that help you in document creation in general and to make your document more accessible. I talk about rethinking tables and simplifying them, what to do when you have a chart that has a lot of data in it. And I'll talk about how you to choose your colors. And then we'll, as Susanna said, we'll go to a Q&A. First of all, before you start your document, and that's the first step, you should decide if it really needs to be a document or you can do it in HTML. HTML offers a lot of features that are easier to make accessible. And in general, actually, it's preferable to work in an HTML. But if for some reason you need to do a document, it can be legal, it can be a corporate reason, or, well, there must be many reasons because there are a lot of documents out there, then you should consider these 5 suggestions or advices. So there are a lot of checklists out there that help you create an accessible document or actually help you make a document that's already created accessible. We are not focusing on that. We take a bit of a different approach, and we say, let's lean back before you start, and let's do some planning. When you create your document, you should do planning anyhow, not only because of accessibility, and you do. So when you know what you want to write about, you have it in your head, you have the main points probably, but if you go beyond that, if you set up in advance your document, you set up the formatting, you think through the whole structure, you can gain a lot of time and you can help yourself as well. It helps a lot when it comes to making sure that your document is accessible. So let's start with it. First point, plan the structure. It means that you should think through your document, create an outline if possible, writing, which means writing down the headers, the main topics you want to write about, and create already the structure that will be the basis for your headings. Headings are the chapter titles, the section titles. Because if you do that, you have a foundation that's stronger for filling it with content. You already start to think about what you write about and where to put it. And of course, when you create your document, it will change. But if you have a strong foundation, then it will be easier to execute those changes or to insert a new element or topic into it. So if you create an outline, you should aim for having meaningful headings. So headings, titles, subtitles that summarize properly what you talk about in that chapter or section. And also make sure that your heading hierarchy is working properly. I'll show you an example which explains for those of you who don't know what a heading hierarchy is. But if you pay attention to it from the beginning, it helps you throughout different formats. This is a big problem when you, for example, need to work with originally PowerPoint slides that are turned into a PDF, or if you need to work with big reports. This is an example from a municipality report. We have the good financial management and financial position and another chapter title. And then you can see that in normal but bold, there's a heading. And there's this quality report in the second chapter, which does not appear in the first one. I mean, the level doesn't appear. So you should avoid that. You should either not have that level or put it everywhere, because when you want to make for the PDF version accessible, then you have to be very creative to solve this or do other compromises. So if you think it through, it's a huge help. It's very difficult to remediate afterwards. Second point, use the built-in tools. Word and PowerPoint both provide built-in tools. In Word, it's called styles. In PowerPoint, there are layouts. If you use them, then if you set them up properly, they ensure that you have the constant structure, constant design, consistent design all through your document. And the good thing is that once you set up, for example, a chapter heading, you set up the spacing, the style, the font style, the color, and everything. Then with one click, you can format the same, get the same format with new chapter headings. It saves a lot of time. Back then, when I wrote my university thesis, I didn't know about it. I spent, I think, 20% of my time renumbering the chapters when I created a new one. And of course, I didn't plan my document back then properly. You also have the table tool that helps you have good and accessible formatting. So using these built-in tools will provide you with a consistent visual appearance. It will also help you to get a well-coded document. It means that it will be the technical accessibility is taken care of. Assistive technology will know which heading level this is, or this is a list, or it's a link. And then in PowerPoint, for example, if you set it up properly, it ensures good reading order. So these are the styles on the left. The first one is the styles from Word, and the second one are a set of layouts in PowerPoint. The good thing is that if you change your mind, you can change these, and then those changes will be adapted to all through your document. And an added advantage that it gives you an overview. So you have the first one you see is now an overview in the navigation pane of your Word. With 2 clicks, you can create a table of content. It gives you bookmarks in PDF, and it gives you, again, an outline, an overview in PowerPoint, which is very helpful to create a consistent document and see what you have in there, and for the user, the reader, to see the structure of the document. Third, rethinking tables. Tables are used to help visualizing information, tabular information, it's called, so data that is structured in a way that can be put in table, but they might not be used properly, or they might be too complex. to understand it through assistive technology, for example, a screen reader. So if you have a complex table, you should think about breaking it up into parts. Or if it can be not a table, it's simple actually, then you can think turning it into a list. And you should always avoid using the tables for formatting reasons, for helping you where to put a text on your page. So here is an example for a table that can be a list. It's a very simple table. It's not really necessary to jump between the columns. So you can either turn into a list or keep the table presentation but linearize it only in code. This is a presentation. It shows how it could be recoded in PDF. So you have the table, but for assistive technology, it would appear as a list. The other thing I mentioned to break up your table, this is you see on the screen a table that shows data from 2007 and 2019. It has multiple column headings. It makes it very difficult to understand. If it's even more complex, it's even more difficult. And for the users of assistive technology, it is also difficult. So why not breaking it up into two tables? It looks the same good, but it's much easier to understand. Number 4, put data in text. If you have a chart or a diagram with a lot of data in it, then and you need that data, you want to present that data for the reader, you cannot probably put it in alt text. Alt text is limited, it should be short, it should be concise. So the solution is to present the data in text or in a table, or close to the chart or in an annex. This is typically something that's very difficult to do afterwards. If I receive a PDF with a chart like that, I have no possibility, or I have to use tricks to put that data into the text, and it definitely wouldn't fit in the alt text. So an example, this is 3 exchange rates, which are visually easily consumable. But the solution is to provide a table that includes all this information in written. So those who cannot see this table, for example, or those who need exact data can recur to the table. It's again a step that if you think in advance, you put it in the text, and it will make your document much more understandable and accessible. And it helps you when it comes to remediating it. Number 5, use a color palette. Of course, it's good to use graphics and colors in your documents. They make your document more fun, more appealing. But it's a problem when you choose colors on the go to ensure that you have a consistent use of colors, and every time you would need to make sure that the color has the good contrast with the background or the color next to it, if it's about a chart, for example. So you should, in the beginning, plan what color palette you want to use. You should choose the colors with sufficient contrast, and you should use a set of colors that you will recur to, for example, when you when you have a hyperlink, or if you want to use colors in your headings, or in any graphic or visual presentation. So here is an example. It's a color palette from Word. You can have these palettes. It's different color palettes, actually. You can choose and you can create your own one. It's in the design menu, both in Word and in PowerPoint. And once you choose the color palette, then you have the same palette in, for example, when you choose font colors. And you have the same palette when you create a chart. You can see that this 5-segment chart is created from these 5 principal colors in the palette. And then if you chose your colors, when you choose your colors, you should always check the contrast ratio. So where it's shown with black, it shows that, for example, in the light blue section, it has a 6.9 to 1 ratio, which is good if you have black text on this background, or the dark green at the bottom section shows that it has a 6.6 to 1 contrast ratio with white text, so it is visible against white background, and usually these contrast ratios, so if you have a good contrast ratio with black, you don't have a good contrast ratio with white. So you can choose your pairings in the beginning, and then you have no problem and you have a good looking document. So these were the 5 tips, and one plus present, if you want, is that you should use the accessibility checker. The accessibility checker developed a lot lately in office products, for example. You should launch it in the beginning. It will tell you if there's an issue, so you identify the issues early, and you can either fix them right away, and that will be it for the rest of it, because if you fix the issue, for example, in a style, then you just use the same style, which is already accessible. Or if it's something that you have to do later again, then you just build it in the workflow, and you don't need to do it in the end in batch, which is very tiresome. So here you can see the evolution of the accessibility checker. The first one is from a 2016 version of Word. The second one is the PowerPoint accessibility checker now in the 365 edition. And the last one, very intuitive, is in Word 365. And these ones, the new ones, already help you fix the issues right away from the accessibility checker. So these were the 5 tips. Plan your structure in advance, use built-in tools wherever you can, rethink your tables, put data in text, and define your color palette at the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter. We have a long list of questions, and I will try to respond to as many of them as possible. So are you prepared for the first question?
Let's see.
Yeah, let's see. How do I determine whether a document could be in HTML? Are there any specific aspects to think of?
Well, any document could be an HTML. It's more about how you use it. So, for example, if you need a contract that somebody needs to sign, probably it is not an HTML. You need a PDF document with the signature field on it, or then the signature function or the signing function. Also, it can be that that your company wants to create a brochure that they want to send around, and the preference is to have it downloadable. In that case, it will also be PDF document usually. If you need a big spreadsheet, it should be an Excel, and that the user need to fill in. It should be an Excel, not an HTML. So these are two considerations that you need to do based on the use and the possibilities that are allowed for you.
Okay, thank you. Are PDFs covered by the EU legislation, and how?
Oh, they are, yes. So the EU legislation is mainly the Web Accessibility Directive and the European Accessibility Act. Both cover PDFs, both cover documents. When they talk about documents or Office documents, then it refers to PDF as well. And they have to fulfill, well, they don't have to fulfill. They need to fulfill the accessibility requirements, which is easiest to be done by following the harmonized standard. So the harmonized standard of the Web Accessibility Directive has a clause on documents, and if those are followed, then legally the requirements are fulfilled.
Yes, and it's only for documents that are created and published after the law entered into force, so it's not pointing backwards, maybe.
Yeah, that's
relevant to say as well. Okay, we take the next one. Can you recommend a tool that checks for both contrast and accessibility for colorblind users?
Accessibility for colorblind users, I don't think it can be checked automatically, because the important thing that there is that you don't use color only as a differentiating feature. And I don't think there's any automated tool that can do that. So there you need to, that's a manual check. If you have a link, it's not enough that it's blue, it should be also underlined, for example. For the color contrast, very often recommended tool, and I use that as well, is the color contrast analyzer, which allows you to pick with the picker colors on the screen and two colors, and it shows you the contrast and if it's acceptable or not, or sufficient or not right away.
I think I believe there are also some more design-oriented tools that can provide recommendations on combinations of colors that are not suitable for color blindness. So I think we can, when we do send out the thank you email, we can also provide some links there. It may be challenging to make interactive PDFs. For example, exporting from Word to PDF in Adobe Acrobat has not been up to speed in the past. Any improvements here recently, or any tips to make interactive PDFs?
Well, I know that there's a lot of improvement lately in the last half year or so when it comes to exporting a Word into PDF. I cannot tell you now if especially with forms there have been improvements. I need to check that.
Okay, thank you. Are all fonts available on Office accessible? Are some better than others?
Oh, that's a good question. So there are fonts that from some sources recommend as more accessible or not. There used to be we used to think that sans serif is better than serif fonts, but actually it depends a bit on the user. So there are fonts that are easy to read for certain users and are difficult for others. So the ideal thing is to keep it. If you have readers that have different cognitive.
So I think the one you're looking for is really use standard fonts, because the standard fonts are what all research finds that the readers are reading better, and it's easier to read if they have a font that they're used to. We cannot know all the user preferences of all users. That differs a lot. But if we stick to the standard fonts, we have both less technical issues, and also we know that at least the majority of the users will probably have seen a font like that before. So that's the only recommendation we can give. There are no accessible or inaccessible or specific dyslexic fonts. That's a myth. So just stick to the standard ones and you'll be fine. Where do I find the accessibility checker?
The accessibility checker, if you have a newer version of Office, you can find it in the review tab. And it's more there, you have more options as well, not just this checker, but for example, you can check, for example, the reading order in PowerPoint. So that's a whole set of tools. But now it's in the review menu. In older version, you need to go to the file menu, and in the info menu, there's a check for issues button or roll down menu, and you can find it there.
Perfect, thank you. How would you go on about the logo of a company does not pass the minimum color contrast when placed on a regular plain white background?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's a difficult question. Usually, so for logos, for graphical elements, there's a lower contrast requirement, so that helps. But even if that is not met, and you cannot change it, and usually you can't, then basically I think the best thing is to provide a proper alt text. But logos are, I think, I mean, it's part of the design, but if they are not, the contrast is not proper and you can't help about anything, can do anything about it, then you have to accept it.
Or send it back to the designer because that's a really bad design.
If you can, yes.
Respecting all suggestions here and fixing accessibility validator things and then saving the document as PDF. Is it enough, or do we need to buy a tool to fix the PDF?
Yeah, well, it depends on the complexity of your document. It can be enough. So to create tables that are simple already takes away a big issue, a big part of the issues that you could only fix in, for example, Adobe Acrobat Pro. So I would say that there's a higher chance that you can get a fully accessible document. And the conversion, as I mentioned, is getting better, so that helps as well. But it is possible that if it's a more complex document, that you would need to remediate more with a professional tool in PDF.
Thank you. If you have footnotes in your Word document and then create a PDF, do you have to make any changes in the PDF to make them work?
Ideally not. I think I know there used to be a problem with that. So, but I think in the last version when I checked, or the most recent version, it can work properly. So again, I think if you keep your footnotes simple, then it can work properly in PDF.
Okay, is there a step-by-step practice to create a table of content in Word with the correct annotations so that it is accessible in a PDF?
No, unfortunately, no.
That was a quick one.
Should I explain the question a bit for the?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so there's a requirement to provide annotation for links, an explanation. For example, if you have an email, then it says email to Peter, for example, as an annotation. And that is required in the PDF standard, the PDF UA standard. And that is, you cannot really do that with a table of content. You can do it with simple links. So no, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, no. Okay, thank you. There's still a couple of questions, and I think we can summarize some of them there and just answer them in the thank you email that we will send to everyone who has registered, together with a link to the recording. And if we could just move to the next slide, please, then we will just invite you to follow our next Friday webinar, which will be on the 11th of October, 1:30, which is our colleagues Sarah Kjellstrand and Malin Hammarberg, who will talk about brain-friendly web design for a stress-free online experience, which sounds like a really good Friday afternoon thing, and then you can relax for the whole weekend after listening to that. So you can find the link to that on our website, and I hope that my colleague will provide the link to the what's up part of our website in the chat, and also the smart guide for today's webinar should be posted in the chat. So with that, I think we have to close for today and say thank you everyone that participated, and of course an extra thank you to Peter for providing the 5 super easy tips for making documents accessible. Thank you very much.